This next video, I'd like to talk to you about having an ILEAP strategy, which is how are you and your agency going to get accredited? And first of all, you need to understand all parts of ILEAP. There's resources on our website, the ILEAP portion of the Illinois Chiefs website. There's documents there that will in a way become your Bible. That has the standards, it has proof tracking sheets, and it has guideline for CEO and accreditation manager. You'll reference those heavily as you move through this process. Similarly, these videos will be posted there. You can, I would suggest watching the video and then re-watching it to determine the strategy you wish to use. So I'm going to cover the strategies here momentarily. It's also important to note that ILEAP is not a crash diet. And by crash diet, I mean, people that pick a diet, crash their way to a goal, and then abandon that diet. ILEAP is more of a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle change. You adopt ILEAP accreditation as a way to get business done. So it's it's definitely not like a new way of doing business, but it's the best way to get business done. You're going to pick paper file or electronic filing through Power DMS. And I'm going to talk about those two methods here shortly. So once you watch this video and understand all the parts, watch it again and seek out which strategies you want to use to be successful. Application and fees. One of the first steps in the ILEAP process is submitting the application and the first year's fee. Fees are $400 per year for Tier 1, and that's for a 4-year cycle, so it would be $400 for each year for a total of $1,600. For Tier 2, it's $800 per year for 4 years for a total of $3,200. Although this is the first step in the actual process, I'm going to recommend a strategy that has you conducting your self-assessment and then dropping your application. Now, self-assessment, what is that? Self-assessment describes the process of reviewing, editing, and publishing your new and revised department policies in order to begin the alignment with ILEAP standards. A solid strategy is to begin this self-assessment because our standards are free. They're on the website right now. So if you're thinking about accreditation, you can begin the process by downloading the standards and starting to align them with your policies and procedures. Then once you get closer, you can drop the application and your first year's fee as you begin to finalize that self-assessment period. Another solid strategy, and I fully recommend this, is to subscribe to IPAC, the Illinois Police Accreditation Coalition. Once a member of IPAC, your subscription would get you benefits of their policy library, which is going to help you meet accreditation standards. ILEAP file setup. You'll notice it's just a standard manila folder. It's got an ILEAP label, which is also found on the website. Inside, the first page of the file is what we call the assessor sheet. You'll find these on the ILEAP portion of the website. And what you'll find is an unpopulated assessor sheet. By unpopulated, I mean that you will just have where it says selection of members for bullet A for this OPR 0501 standard, that compliance documentation through operational policy or general order blank, and then the rest of that box is blank. What we have here is a populated or completed assessor sheet. And as you set up your files, you will enter the Word document and populate that with your proofs of compliance. So for this file, and this is a working file from the Macomb Police Department, is you'll have the general order, and to prove this standard, the OPR 0501, Macomb Police is using their Ops 45 policy, and they've marked Section 4, Paragraph A and B, as their general order proof, and then they've also submitted an email, a copy of a posted announcement, and a copy of questions asked during an oral interview for a tactical member. And so what we find as we turn to our next page in our file is that OPS, or that Ops 45 file. And there's a note here that it's This is an accreditation manager note, but it also helps the assessors that this is, in case these proofs get out of order, they can be put back in order with that note there. And what we have is the highlighting, drawing the assessor's eye essentially to the very high points of the file. So this way, the assessor doesn't have to read maybe an 8 to 10 page policy. Their eye can just be drawn right to paragraphs A and then B. And as you'll note, only the needed portions of the policy are included, not the entire 10-page policy. And moving on to the next proof, this was that email that was referenced, which stands as a proof of compliance to show that the selection of members was done in accordance with best practices. The suggested proofs would be what we consider fresh. As we see on this assessor sheet, by fresh proofs we mean proofs taken within the previous year or the year leading up to when you're getting accredited. So for instance, currently it's 2019, December 2019. These are from a working file from 2012, but if I were seeking accreditation right now, I would be picking proofs to meet this standard from 2019. When we're talking about proofs and them having to be fresh, a question I get often is, what if something has not happened? For instance, with the OPR 0501 standard we were just looking at, which governs use, implementation, and selection to a tactical team. What if you've set up a tactical team but haven't selected members yet? Or what if you've had a use of force situation that has not happened, like deadly force incident has not occurred? How do we prove something that has not happened? That's very easy. That we can do that through what we call a non-occurrence memo, which is essentially a memo to the ILEAP file stating that something has not happened. Typically a non-occurrence memo might be something as simple as, for the year 2019, this agency has not had a deadly force incident, or we have not had new members selected to the tactical team. And that memo would then serve as proof of compliance. Similarly, there's time-sensitive proofs, which are proofs based on timing, like perhaps a quarterly evidence audit, a yearly evidence inspection, or quarterly audits of petty cash by a third-party person not connected with the actual petty cash procedure. These proofs, in order to populate your file, it's important to note that if it's a yearly proof, you should have one proof per standard. If it's a quarterly proof, you would have 2 per year just to populate your file. You would certainly still commit the proof procedure quarterly, but we would only need 2 of them per file. And if it's a monthly item, we would need 4 per file. We also get the question, if it's a multi-bulleted standard, perhaps the standard has A, B, C, and D, does each bullet need proof per year? And yes, we do. I know there was a CLIA interpretation that it was only 1 proof per bullet per year. So my understanding of that interpretation was that 2016A would have 1 proof, 2016B would have 1 proof, or I'm sorry, 2017B would have another proof, 2018C would have the 3rd proof, and 2019D would have the 4th. What we're saying in ILEAP is that interpretation, which I think has already been changed by CLIA, we would seek to have 1 proof per bullet per year. So for bullet A, you would have 2016, 17, 18, and 19. Also, written directives and proof of compliance. A written directive doesn't always have to be a policy. It can certainly be a policy, but it can also be a training procedure. It can be a training manual. It can be written procedures. It can be a labor contract, an FTO manual, perhaps a daily observation report from a field training officer. It can be training certificates. Essentially, it can be anything that shows compliance. Now, what's a proof of compliance? Essentially, a proof is any document that shows that something did or didn't occur. I've seen everything from inspection forms to case reports to dispatch tickets, evidence logs, memos, and even photos of squad cars or of a juvenile filing cabinet with a lock on it. All those things can serve as proof of compliance. Now, as an assessor, we can take those proofs of compliance and use them to certify that the standard's been met. But oftentimes, if we have a question, we could follow that up with, let's say, for instance, a juvenile filing cabinet with a lock on it. The assessor might ask the question, who has access to the keys or where are the keys kept? And that way we can further understand not only the procedure, but make sure that it meets standards. A non-occurrence memo, like I spoke about, is something that didn't happen. If there was no use of force incidents for 2019, you would just memo that to the file. Let's talk about strong versus weak proofs. A strong proof is something that's fresh, pertinent to the item involved, whereas a weak proof might be an email that says no one stopped a juvenile on an ATV this year. For instance, a stronger proof would be the written directive matched with maybe a dispatch ticket suggesting that maybe there was a call about juveniles on ATVs or something like that. I routinely answer questions about what is a strong proof and what is a weak proof. And by all means, if you ever have any questions, feel free to message me. And what I want for you is to have the most information at hand when you're making these determinations. We're talking about mock assessments in ILEAP. Now, in CLIA, mocks are not optional. In ILEAP, they're optional, and that was done for a variety of reasons. What I'd like to see is more departments, especially if it's their first time getting accredited, is to participate in a mock assessment. Now, a mock assessment is essentially just that. It's a dry run. A couple of assessors will come and evaluate the agency, review the files, and kind of give you a nitty-gritty determination of where you're at. This is usually done 6 months prior to an actual assessment, and that will give you time. You might not be fully ready for the mock at 6 months prior to your actual assessment, but 6 months beforehand will give you the ability to steer that ship if you have any shortcomings. It'll give you time to address those prior to your actual assessment. Now, who completes the mock? If you're a member of IPAC, which I fully suggest you take advantage of them, it will normally be IPAC mock assessors. They're fully trained in ILEAP and CLIA assessments, so they're going to give you that critical eye. Often it's said that it's harder than the actual assessment, which is good because it's better to be put through the ringer on a dry run than the actual assessment. The mock assessors will go over your policies, your files, proofs. They'll take a tour of your department, and it'll be with a fine-tooth comb to best prepare you for your department assessment. The required agency information can be found in the documents portion of your ILEAP website. I can also provide samples from other departments. But essentially what it is a community and agency snapshot in narrative form about what makes up your community and your department. There is stats that will be needed for the assessors to digest so that they can get a feel for your department and for your community. Traffic stats, Part 1 crimes, complaints, grievances are all required. The data, in conjunction with your agency and community profile, serves to educate the assessors about your department and your community. This gives them the most inside look at what makes up your department. While those paper files are mailed off to the assessors will mark many of those files, if they're meeting standard, will mark them as met based on the file assessment alone. Remaining files are usually reserved for interview or observation during the on-site assessment. Files that are not met will just be marked in the assessor's notes and communicated with the accreditation manager so that the accreditation manager can make file repairs prior to the on-site. Similarly, an off-site file review through Power DMS or the electronic method takes place remotely, with the accreditation manager granting mock or ILEAP assessor clearance through the Power DMS site. Then remotely, the ILEAP assessor will work and set statuses and mark completed to those files. Not only is it saving on shipping cost and time, but it's also less cumbersome. And as the accreditation manager, you can actually watch the process and the progress of files getting completed through Power DMS. The on-site assessment is the capstone to the entire process. The department accreditation manager and assessors will craft the on-site agenda together to include a tour of the agency, vehicle inspections, an evidence audit, petty cash audits, file audits. There's also a call-in session where the public can have their opinions heard or questions answered about what accreditation is, and they can weigh in on their feelings or beliefs about the department and the personnel. There's an assessor workspace that usually incorporates a static display, which covers policy and procedure manuals, disaster plans, and other items of interest to the assessors. The assessors will participate in ride-alongs and staff interviews with important people within the department. And when I say important people, I don't just mean the chiefs and deputy chiefs, but I mean the actual grunts out there, because those are your most important people. The people that manage your evidence vault, your line staff that conduct investigations and handle calls for service. We'll actually interview them not only to see what they know about accreditation, but primarily what they know about their own roles and job. As an accreditation manager, it's your duty to prepare those people for the assessors. And we will ask questions such as, what do you know about accreditation? What's it like working for a department working towards or that has already been accredited? But most of the questions will center around their wheelhouse. For instance, if we're on a ride-along with a patrol officer, we probably won't be asking them questions about selection or who has access to juvenile files. We might ask them questions about pursuit or their video camera or their body cam. We might ask questions about if they collect evidence at a crime scene, how often does that happen, and where do they deposit that evidence prior to the end of their shift. So we would ask job-specific and standard-specific questions. And then there's also a lot of, tell us about your job. What is it like to work here? How do you like it? And so we can kind of get a sense of the officers and the agency. At the conclusion of the on-site assessment, there's an exit interview. Now, the exit interview is where the assessors share what they've seen through the whole department, through the entire visit, with command staff, whether that's usually the chief, deputy chief, accreditation manager, and anybody else involved in the process. But most importantly, you're going to get the assessor's recommendation at that time of whether the department is accredited, not accredited, or reaccredited if they're seeking reaccreditation. And this is important for a variety of reasons. ILEAP doesn't intend to leave you in the dark or surprise you with, oh no, you didn't get it 6 weeks later. What you'll get is the recommendation with the caution that the ILEAP Council has the final determination. If there are problems or bumps or wrinkles that need ironed out, the accreditation manager and the assessor can create what we call an action plan. For instance, an agency was going through accreditation and they didn't have some certain proof about the generator. So the assessor created an action plan with that accreditation manager that once the generator is inspected, the inspecting party signs off and I get a copy of that signature to the assessor, then that department was able to get accredited. So if there are broken files or files in need of repair or something that is just not quite right, there's a way to iron out those wrinkles. The Illinois Chiefs believe in helping the agency and the accreditation manager through the process, not hanging you on the process. And I believe that's one of the advantages of ILEAP over other accreditation modules, is that there's an ILEAP coordinator like myself. Not only me, but the staff in Springfield are designed or are committed to helping you through the process. Award ceremony is a venue of your choosing, and we want you to get the most PR bang for your buck. So if we've seen departments do a presentation in front of the department because they were the lifeblood of the entire process, we've seen departments choose city council meeting. Similarly, we've also had departments receive their award at the Illinois Chiefs annual conference. I'm more than willing to work with the VPs and the director to get you a award ceremony that's fitting for your agency and for your community. Having an accreditation process strategy is imperative and integral to the process. There's two methods to use, each one independent of each other. So when I mentioned at the beginning of this video to watch the video so you understand all the components, now is the part where I talk strategy. So you can always rewatch this part to determine what best strategy fits you and your agency. First, there's paper method. That's using traditional paper folders, manila folders, and all your proofs and standards will be on assessor sheets and printed and highlighted. This method is, if you go with Tier 1, is $400 per year for $1,600 for the 4-year cycle, or $800 per year or $3,200 for the 4-year cycle for Tier 2. The chief or the accreditation manager are both typically members of the Illinois Chiefs of Police. Subsequently, a subscription to IPAC, which is about $100 per year, and it's optional, but it's going to give you a lot of bang for your buck. This method uses paper files to accomplish accreditation. There is shipping and office supplies involved, and so you'll make adjustments for those costs. And meals and lodging for assessors during the on-site are covered by the accrediting agency. Typically, it's 2 assessors for 2 days. Normally, with most departments that seek accreditation, there is a long first day that usually begins at 8 or 8:30 in the morning and usually ends by 9 or 9:30 that night. And then the next day begins at 8 or 8:30 and goes till about 1 p.m. For larger size agencies, we've seen up to a 3 or even a 4-day assessment. But you'll work with me to determine what agency assessment size that you'll need. The second strategy is using Power DMS. Power DMS method has the same ILEAP fee structure, $400 a year for Tier 1 and $800 per year for Tier 2. Typically the chief and or the accreditation manager are also members of the Illinois Chiefs of Police. I would still suggest subscribing to IPAC for the $100 a year. But using Power DMS is an electronic accreditation package. Power DMS Suite has an accreditation module that can be had for $12.50 per year, but I believe if you reach out to Kelly Kyle of Power DMS, and I'll have her email available for you, if you reach out to her and mention ILEAP conference pricing, you can probably get it a little cheaper than $12.50. Tell her Jeff sent you. The shipping and office costs are nearly zero, unless you have internal copies, but you're not making boxes of file folders when you're using the Power DMS method. Power DMS increases your speed, accuracy, neatness, and it also saves time. There's also a webinar in conjunction with Power DMS on the ILEAP website under resources. I would suggest if you have about half an hour to check that one out. That's a complete walkthrough of the accreditation process using Power DMS. Now for the on-site, you'll still have meals and lodging And again, that's typically a 2-day venue for a typical size agency.